In my quest for learning more about how to Aramusha, I decided to experiment with Blade Blockade, of course breaking it in the process. As you all know, Aramusha's timed all guard has a superior block status, meaning light and heavy attacks will bounce off this guard and give Aramusha a safe counter. Or so we thought. Zone attacks ignore this rule, speculatively because they harness the power of light and heavy together and it's too much for Blade Blockade. In any case, zone attacks won't bounce off a superior block, meaning the animation plays out and the hero that threw it can follow up as if the attack landed. So with that in mind, who is able to counter Aramusha's counter? On a correct read, all Blade Blockade moves can be countered by Warden, Conqueror, Lawbringer, Centurion, Warlord, Highlander, Kensei, and Shaolin after throwing their zone attacks. In all of these cases, both the light and heavy can be parried and both the heavy and kick can be dodged. For Conk, Cent, Highlander, and Shaolin, the zone needs to be feinted to gain a window to counter. Centurion, Highlander, and Shaolin can deal with any Blade Blockade follow-up as long as one of the first two attacks are blockaded and they feint. Their final hit has a longer recovery and they can't counter any moves. Kensei, however, is the opposite, as you can only counter Blade Blockade moves if Aramusha blockades the final hit of your zone. Of the heroes listed above, I'd argue Conqueror, Lawbringer, and Shaolin have the strongest counters to Blade Blockade. Conqueror and Lawbringer can parry any attack, and if the kick or heavy is dodged, their bashes will beat any follow-up attacks. Shaolin can cancel the zone almost immediately after the first hit, giving him more time to potentially react to an incoming attack, and it also lets him be the only one who can dodge the kick early enough to get a guaranteed guard break. There are some other unique interactions. Nobushi and Zanhu can both dodge to cancel the recovery of their zone attacks. This means both the kick and heavy can be dodged, but the top light or heavy can't be parried. You might think to follow up with a dodge attack, but you can be blockaded again, and since Aramusha can follow up a Blade Blockade heavy with another attack, you have to think 5 steps ahead in this scenario that you'll likely never encounter in a real match. HITO and even JJ can trade with Blade Blockade attacks. Unsurprisingly, Hitokiri's Hyper Armor chain heavies and lights can be used here to trade as long as Aramusha doesn't go for a kick. However, the damage is not always in Hitokiri's favor. If Aramusha heavies, HITO can light, losing 14 to 16 and having frame disadvantage. HITO can heavy, but it can be blockaded again without a way to counter. That's a minimum 0 to 32 loss there. If Aramusha lights, Hitokiri's light loses the trade 14 to 20 and again has frame disadvantage. But if HITO heavies in this situation, they win the trade 22 to 20 and have chain pressure. JJ can throw a chain light for 15 damage and it lands before any of Aramusha's counters including the kick. However, the Hyper Armor lets Aramusha keep going to trade for more damage. Finally, we have the multi-hit zones from Berserker, Shaman, and Shinobi. Aramusha needs to blockade the first attack or else he's locked in Berserker's zone. You'd think the Hyper Armor on Aramusha's counters would let you interrupt Berserker's zone, but unfortunately it doesn't kick in early enough, so you have to wait until the 4th hit. While Berserker can't parry or dodge any attack, they can get a chain light to trade for 9 damage. Shaman and Shinobi are definitely the wild cards of the whole test, and results will vary depending on the actions of both players. If blockaded, the first part of Shaman's zone can be interrupted with a counter and she'll trade for 5 damage. If Aramusha delays the counter until the first part is finished, Shaman can trade with the first hit of the second part of her zone or the soft feint bleed stab. However, Shaman can feint the second part of her zone, and in this situation she can parry both attacks and dodge the kick or heavy. If Aramusha is hit by the first part of the zone, he can still blade blockade the second part or the soft feint into light. In both cases though, Shaman will eat the attack. In contrast, Aramusha cannot interrupt the first part of Shinobi's zone attack with a blockade counter and must wait for the first 2 hits before throwing a move. If Shinobi lets the zone fly, they trade for 7 damage, but if they feint, Shinobi can parry the light, heavy, and dodge the heavy or kick. And if the second part of Shinobi's zone is blockaded, they're still able to counter all of Aramusha's counters. So if there's anything I learned today, Shinobi is OP. Take all this with a grain of salt. Unless you're scripting or have ridiculous reaction speeds, I'm fairly certain that you have to make a read or get really lucky to correctly parry or dodge Aramusha's Blade Blockade attacks. If I didn't mention a hero, it's because they couldn't counter any attacks or trade with Hyper Armor. Trust me, I tried them all. A huge thank you to Master James for testing all this with me, and of course my Patreon supporters, especially Swekles, Kyle, and Shadow. How to Aramusha is coming this week, so stay tuned for that. Have a good one, I will see you then.